kind of hopeful, though, that perhaps the front line might have said there's been stuff thrown at us, but if that's not the case, then my thoughts are, so the police behind will pull back, they will consolidate, get ready for what's called the secondary tactic, which is the arrest procedures.
So you anticipate this will be an offensive move by the riot police?
There's no one doing anything.
Sorry, Lance, I have to interrupt. Apologies, Lance, I have to interrupt. The Prime Minister is speaking.
To clear the Parliament and surrounding area of an unlawful occupation that has gone on for 22 days. I know that in planning for that operation, the police expected there would be hostility, resistance and violence. They planned for that because that is what they and Wellingtonians have experienced for several weeks now. And while they had planned for that, it is another thing entirely to witness it. To our frontline police and emergency and fire services, you have our deep admiration and our thanks. You have been calm but resolute in trying to bring this occupation to a conclusion. It has come at great risk to your personal safety. Thank you for putting others before yourselves. We have all at times felt angry during this occupation. After all, when we're in the middle of a pandemic, have 400 people hospitalised and 20,000 people becoming sick in just one day, it's almost impossible to comprehend that people would stand opposed to efforts to slow that down and to help care for our most vulnerable. One day, it will be our job to try and understand how a group of people could succumb to such wild and dangerous mis- and disinformation. And while many of us have seen that disinformation and dismissed it as conspiracy theory, a small portion of our society have not only believed it, they have acted upon it in an extreme and violent way that cannot stand. We have a difficult journey in front of us to address the underlying cause of what we have seen here today, but in doing so, we will never ever excuse it. It was an attack on our frontline police. It was an attack on our parliament. It was an attack on our values, and it was wrong. And the reason it would have shaken so many to witness it is because it stands so completely against not just our response to COVID, but who we are as people. But we will not be defined by this. This pandemic will not be defined by the hard conversations we've all had these past few years. Our people will not be defined by a small handful of protesters. Our country will not be defined by the dismantling of an occupation. In fact, when we look back at this period in our history, I hope we remember one thing. Together, thousands more lives were saved over the past 2 years by your actions as New Zealanders than were on that front lawn of Parliament today. The sacrifices we were all willing to make to look after one another, that is what will define us. No protest, no fire, no placards will ever change that. Today the police will restore order, and tomorrow your government will continue to work hard to get us safely back to the normality everyone deserves. Now, happy to take your questions. Yeah, Louise. I was both angry and also deeply saddened, to see the Parliament, your Parliament, our Parliament, desecrated in that way, and a children's playground destroyed by a small group of illegal protesters. Made me feel both angry and deeply sad. But as I say, it is not something that will define New Zealand's response to this pandemic.
Prime Minister, what would be those trespassers, as you say, that set fire to a children's playground on the people's front lawn? Is this why you refuse to go down and talk to them?
This demonstrates one of the reasons why we refuse to engage with that group. It was an illegal occupation. They engaged in hostile, violent and aggressive behaviour throughout the occupation, and today that has culminated in the desecration of this Parliament's grounds, the People's Parliament, our democracy. But I am absolutely committed. We will restore those grounds, and we will not be defined by one act by a small group of people. Jason.
Today we've seen people hurl projectiles at police and firemen trying to put out the fire that the protesters started. What is your message to those that are engaging in that behavior?
There are words I cannot use in this environment for what I saw today, but I felt the same anger that I know many New Zealanders would have felt witnessing the hurling of basically weapons that people were able to get their hands on, LPG bottles thrown onto flames. Currently we have cobblestones being hurled at police. It is still a live event. I felt both anger at what I was seeing, but I also felt resolute in what I was seeing. What we have done as New Zealanders has been the right thing to look after one another. And what we've seen in response to that has been completely wrong. To our police, our firefighters, our frontline services, time and time again, they show us the lengths they're willing to go to look after us. And I know that we are deeply grateful for those acts today. I do. I have managed to speak with the police commissioner. There have been various injuries amongst our frontline police today, most of which have been able to be treated on site. I will leave it to him to go into more detail at this stage.
And a lot of the protesters have been seen to be sort of pouring milk over their eyes. Do you have any update on whether they've actually been used sort of tear gas or?
No, I do not believe that has been the case. I imagine right now the fires that they have created along the forecourt of Parliament or the front of Parliament, including by the War Memorial, is causing more distress than some of what the police would have engaged in today. I do not believe that was used, but it would be for the police to speak to whatever was utilised to keep them and others safe today.
Right up until late this afternoon, parents still had their children on the lawn. What did you make of seeing that today?
The presence of children all the way through this occupation has hampered the efforts of police, because police have rightly been mindful of the presence of those children. Today I saw myself children present. It was in much smaller numbers than what we've seen previously, but I know the police were mindful in all of their engagement of their presence. We did have other agencies there today, and they were present should there have been a situation where, for instance, adults who are engaging in behaviour that may have led to arrest. Should there have been children who are left unsupervised or uncared for, there was preparations made for that eventuality.
What do you make of parents who are willing to put their children in that sort of
I
danger?
don't have words for it.
Today the protesters have been cleared off. Tomorrow the clean-up begins. But also, this has revealed a pretty radical element out there. What advice have you received, or police or intelligence services pretty much a heightened alert for the possibility of local attacks?
There's nothing to suggest that our security settings as a country need to change. I think to put it in perspective, I was advised by the police commissioner that we had in the order of 270 protesters who were causing the acts of violence and destruction we saw on the front lawn of Parliament today.